Okay, so we shall discuss our last topic that we were talking about, memory systems. So we shall continue that. So memory systems will continue, and we have already seen in the last lecture that how the memory statograms can be designed, statogram cells can be designed. So we have discussed about statogram, or SRAM. So we understood that what was the basic function of a static RAM. Now, what we shall see now, that how the dynamic RAMs can be designed, because dynamic RAMs are important with respect to primary memory, because static RAMs are quite expensive, that we have already looked into it. We'll see the designing of semiconductor RAMs, static RAMs, larger designs. But before we go for larger design, let us understand the principle of dynamic RAMs. So the second one is dynamic RAMs. Or DRAM. Now, from the name itself, you can probably guess that why this is called static and why it is called dynamic. Can someone tell me that what can be a possible reason that we call it a static RAM and why we call it a dynamic RAM? Any guess? Anyone? No idea? Okay, so let me tell you that this is with respect to the way the values are stored. So static means once you store something, it remains there. It requires constant power. Okay. Whereas in case of dynamic, it does not require constant power. So here basically we need a constant supply so that the value stays there. So if you, that's why it's static. If you would like the value to be static, you need to apply constant power here. Whereas in case of dynamic RAM, you don't apply constant power. Now the question is that if you don't apply constant power, how the value is stored? What kind of components can be used to design dynamic RAMs? Now, can you tell me that what kind of electronic components can be used for that? Any guess? Anyone? What happened to the class today? No one is responding.
No idea.
No idea. Okay, what are the components used in designing circuits? Electronic circuits. Remember those components.
Logical gates.
Gates are not components basically. How the gates are designed? Using
Transistors.
transistors. So other than transistors, if you remember that electronics, basic electronics, what are the other basic components you have heard about other than transistors?
Diodes.
Yeah, diodes are used for basically designing transistors. Anything other than diode? Transistors and triodes, they are same. Okay. What about capacitor? Capacitor, you know, na?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it holds charge. Then we have resistors also. Resistance. Okay. So you have resistance, capacitance, and transistors. Inductors are also there. Yeah, right. Inductors are also there. So these are the four main components: resistors, transistors, capacitors, and inductors. Now transistors are used for switching. Resistors are used for voltage drops. Capacitors are used for holding the charge temporarily. Okay. And inductors are used for basically transferring the charge in a non-conductive way. Non-contact way. So dynamic ramps actually take advantage of another one component, that is capacitor. It is dynamic in a nature. That means whenever you store something, it does not stay alive always. It goes down. The voltage goes down using some characteristics of the capacitor, but you can actually refresh it to bring it to its original level. Okay. So information is stored in a dynamic memory cell in the form of a charge on a capacitor. So now we are talking about dynamic RAM. So information is stored in a dynamic memory cell in the form of a charge on a capacitor. That's it. However, this charge can be maintained for only maybe tenths of milliseconds. But the original requirement is we need the cell to store information for longer period. So what we need? The capacitor must be refreshed. So this is dynamic RAM. The information is stored in dynamic RAM cell in the form of a charge on a capacitor. However, this charge can only last for maybe tens of milliseconds, but we may require it for longer period. So what we need to do? We need the cell to store information for longer period. So the capacitor must be refreshed periodically. And a very simple circuit to do that can be like this. So we again recall our two lines. One was word line, which is nothing but address, and this is bit line. This is data. What we do is very simple thing. So when you want to charge this capacitor, say you want to store logic 0. You want to store logic 0. What you will do? First, you will select this word line because that is where you would like to store. So you need to see the word line address. So we activate this. This transistor is active. Now you want to store logic 1. So you apply voltage here, 5 volt. That volt with a certain drop here, it passes through the transistor because the transistor is on currently because you have already selected this line, and it charges the capacitor. It charges the capacitor. So obviously it will take some time. This charging takes time. But once it is charged, you can withdraw this voltage. You do not need to hold this voltage. You can also switch off this word line. By the characteristics of the capacitor, what it will do, it will start discharging. And you know that after some point of time, because capacitor has a characteristics, it's like this. If you remember, the characteristics is something like this. This is charging time. This is discharging time. So discharging time is much longer. I'm not drawing the curve, ideal curve. Okay, but what I'm trying to say that this is the discharging time and this is the charging time. So within this time, you charge it to the full, and then we withdraw the voltage here. And the value gets charged. And then this capacitor, started discharging because it has a decay. It will discharge, but it's a slow decay. So it will be storing for some time, which is tens of milliseconds. But beyond this time, which I am talking about tens of milliseconds, it will fall below the threshold. So you won't be able to, if you sense the voltage again while reading, if you apply voltage here, if you read the voltage here again, you may not get the threshold value. So you need to refresh it. So you should ensure that all these capacitors get refreshed at certain interval of time, but not on regular basis. That's why it is dynamic RAM. So the characteristics are like that. They are slow in nature. Why they are slow in nature? Because of the design of the circuit. You need charging time. So writing takes time unless it reaches to the voltage, desired voltage. It takes time. Also, it needs to be refreshed. So there are two disadvantages. One is it is slow for obvious reason, and it requires additional circuit to refresh it. You need to sense the voltage continuously and check it that whether it needs to be refreshed or not. With this additional circuit, you can actually maintain this one. But what are the advantages? Advantages are it requires lesser number of components and it is damn cheap because it requires only one transistor and one capacitor. On the contrary, when we looked into static RAM designs, we have seen that they require 6 transistors. CMOS design, 6 transistors. Okay. Now all today's primary memory, when you go for buying your RAM for your personal computer, we actually buy these dynamic RAMs. Okay. And that is the reason we get these memory cells very cheap. They are not that expensive, simply because of the number of components used to design one cell, memory cell. In contrast to the number of transistors required to design a static RAM cell. Okay. So these are the two different ways we design memory cells. Now let us see that how these memory cells can be used to design larger chips. So we are only talking about a single cell. Okay. Is that clear? The concept of dynamic RAM?
Yes.
Yes. It's a very simple one. So let us now go for the actual design, but how do we design larger memory cells using such static RAM cells or dynamic RAM cells? So designing of larger memory. So let us take an example. We want to design initially start with say 16 into 8. Memory. So 16 into 8 means this is words. These are bits or cells. So we'd like to design one memory that has 16 words or 16 lines, or you can say that 16 rows, and each row has 8 bits. So when you read, you don't read one bit, you read the entire 8 bits or 1 byte. So we call it a 16 into 8 organization. So how the cells can be organized? Because you need to use either static RAM cell design or dynamic RAM cell design. Whatever you use it, you need to arrange them properly. So how this can be arranged? Okay. So there are many ways you can do it. Let us see one way of designing this one. I shall be now showing you a PPT slide. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this one gives, I do not want to draw it because unnecessarily it will take time. Today I would like to cover a bit of topics. So this one is one circuit or organization for a 16x8 cells. Let us understand that how it does. Now, on the left side, you see that there are 4 lines, A0 to A3. Why it's A0 to A3? 4 lines? Because we have 16 rows. So these W0 to W15 are coming from the address decoder. So you provide 4 lines as inputs and you get 4 to 16 decoders. You use a 4 to 16 decoder. So one of the lines will be high at a time. And we name these lines as W0, W1 to W15. And this line actually passes through. Okay. Now you put these cells. If you remember when we talked about the statigram designing, that one particular cell is supported by the original value as well as complementary value depending on whatever you require. Okay. So each and every small blue square is actually one cell. And these lines are the word line. These lines are word lines. If you remember the diagram that we talked about in the statigram design, there was a word line and 2 bit lines. One is the B, another is B complement. Now inside this cell, what is there? You know, there are 6 transistors inside each and every cell. For the timing, we are assuming this statigram. This is basically for statigram. And these lines are coming to sense and write circuit. So depending on whether you are reading or writing, sensing means reading, you are sensing the voltage, writing means writing. That's why this line is a bidirectional line. You can see either it will act as input or output. That's why these are bidirectional lines. Okay, these are bidirectional lines. These are bidirectional lines. And we actually provide the signal which is coming from the processor, read/write. It can be through a single line because either you will be reading or writing. You are not doing together simultaneously. So obviously you can use a 1-bit control signal, read or write complement. Okay. And the CS is a chip select. Why it is required? Because there are so many chips available. So that's why it is required to designate that which chip. I will come to that part, why the CS is required. So with respect to design many such 16x8 components, you basically require a chip select part. I'll come to that part, chip select, slightly later. Now, you only concentrate on read and write, data lines and address lines. So what is so how can I write it? The block diagram for this is something like this. It is a memory which looks like this. 16x8, it takes A0 to A3 address and it provides D0 to D7 and read write bar, and there is a chip select. Is the organization clear? Let me switch on my camera again. So see what I'm drawing here. (16 into 8), A0 to A3, address line, D0 to D7 bidirectional data line, read write bar, and chip select. This is my memory. This is a small memory. It's a 16 into 8. You can say that 16 8-bit registers. Okay. Is that clear? Both the organization as well as the block diagram? Is address line, bidirectional data, read write, and chip select. That's it. So when during the read operation, generate read signal, then is read or read the data lines. That is read operation. Write operation, generate write signal and provide address and data, wait for write to be completed. Because any operation takes time. Like here, read the data lines after waiting. After it is available. So in the read operation, you give the address, you give the read signal, take the data from here. In the write operation, you give the address, give the data, provide the write signal. That's it. These are the two operations performed. Okay. Now, this is a 16 into 8 design. We may need larger memory. Okay. So how about going for even larger? Let's say my
last page, one second.
I'll upload these slides, don't worry, as an image.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So if we want to design something like that 1K into 1 chip. So 1K locations, every location has 1 bit. Every location has 1 bit. I mean to say that if you go for 10 to 10 bit decoder, okay, 10 to the power 10, it will be a huge one. It will be a huge one. So that is the reason we don't go for such huge decoders. Rather, we will divide the part into some part will be doing the row addressing, some part will be doing the column addressing. So 1K into one chip, that means how many cells are there? 32 into 32 cells. This is 1024 cells. So instead of designing one cell, and placing all the cells in a single column and select one row at a time, it will be a huge burden on the decoder. We can actually make a separate design. That is what basically I am going to show you now. Now again, see the diagram here. This is the organization of a 1K into one memory chip. Here, this memory, the data bus is 1 bit. You see that this is the data bus, this is 1 bit data bus. Okay. Now how it works? Instead of using a 10 cross, a 10 to the power 10 decoder, what it is using? It is using a 5-bit decoder. Now the 10-bit address lines are divided into two parts. This 5-bit row address, so it's a 5-bit decoder now, 5 to 31 decoder or 32 decoder, 5 to 32. So these are what lines? W0 to W31, 32 lines. And these 32 lines are given as the word lines to the 32 rows. There are 32 rows. Okay. So at a time you get 32 values depending on the read or write operation, whether it is reading operation, all the 32 bits you get it here. And what these next remaining 5 bits are used, they are used as a column decoder. So how we use it? Now here we use output to be multiplexed, input to be demultiplexed. So if you are reading, then it is going to the output. So out of all these 32 bits are actually passed through a 32 to 1 multiplexer. And the same circuit is used as a demultiplexer when you are basically writing. So this bit, if you are reading, it is coming one of these 32 bits, it goes out here. If you are writing, this value goes to one of these. And which one to go? It is selected. On which one to go? I mean, which one will come here or this one will go to which? It will be decided based on this 5-bit. So this is one circuit which is basically a 32 into 1 output multiplexers and input demultiplexer. Depending on the read and write signal, if it is read, the circuit will act as a multiplexer. One of the outputs from this cell will be passed to the output line. If it is write operation, the input will go to one of the output lines. So this circuit works as a demultiplexer. Okay. Is that clear, this circuit?
Yes, sir.
So this one actually organizes 1K into one chip. Now, if you would like to develop 1K into 8 chip, what you'll have to do? Remember, what you do not require is basically this decoder. Because this decoder can be used, the same decoder can be used for another cell where it will be another 1K into 1. So you do it for 8 times. The same decoder decoded output can be used for row decoding for the other chips also. And the same lines can be used for the multiplexing also. Because this part can be common part. Only thing is that in case of this multiplexer, you need 8-bit multiplexer here. We are talking about one line, there it will be 8 lines. But this decoder outputs are same. So you can actually repeat these multiplexers here. You can use, because if you apply this as 1-bit multiplexer, okay, then you'll have to apply 8 such multiplexers. Okay. But this row decoding is the same decoding. So the same row is selected.
And sir, column size will increase, right?
Yes. Because the multiplexer actually brings out 1 bit. So if you design this multiplexer 32 into 1 multiplexer and 1 to 32 demultiplexer as a 1-bit multiplexer and demultiplexer, then you cannot reuse it. If you implement it as a 8-bit multiplexer demultiplexer, then it is useful. Okay, you can use it directly, no issue. So the same circuit of the multiplexer and demultiplexer can be used. Only thing is that you need to basically change its input output number of bits. The multiplexing logic remains the same. Because when you get the 10th column for this cell, you also get the 10th column for the next cell. You also get the 10th column for the next cell. So this multiplexing logic remains same. And you know that the select lines are the main culprit in multiplexing. So the select line generation is not duplicated. Only the output will be, when the output will be passed, that will be duplicated. So that those gates will be duplicated. You require multiple gates. But the select line logic, if you carefully look into the multiplexer logic, what is that? The select lines basically uses and operations. Okay. Now those gates you don't need those gates. Only you need the OR gates where the multiplexing, where the output is passed. So designing of a 4x1 multiplexer for 1 bit and designing of a 4x1 multiplexer for k bits is not that difficult, because the multiplexing logic remains the same. The select lines, the logic for select lines, they are same. Only thing is the output goes higher. So the circuit that actually generates the select lines or that processes the select line, that remains the same. So you save a lot of hardware. And decoder is the same decoder is used. Decoder is the same decoder being used. So that is why this design is a good design. 1K into 1 memory, you can say it 1K into 8 memory, you can say 1K into 16 memory, you can say 1K into 32 memory also. Only thing is that the width of the input output lines will be changing. Only part that means the OR gate at the end of the multiplexer needs to be changed, or more number of OR gates may be required, but the selecting the lines, that logic remains the same. Okay, so this is 1K into 1 memory chip design. Okay. Now we can actually even go for further higher order designing, but let's not make things complicated. Okay, how dynamic RAM cells are designed? Let us see that how DRAM larger chips are designed. So now I shall say show you something. Internal organization of a 32M into 8 DRAM. It's a huge one, 32M. That means 32 megabyte. This is possibly, we are talking about the modern day computer's memory. At least when I was a student, I worked with only 256 kilobytes of memory, 1 MB, maybe 512 kilobytes, 1 MB maximum memory I saw. These days, you people go to market and buy 32 GB of memory. Okay, but our time it was maximum 2 MB, 4 MB, maximum 4 MB. Okay. Now these are realistic memory which are used in modern computers. 32M into 8. 8 can be extended to 32. So don't worry about the right part, because this is the size of the data. This is the size of the address. So 32 M locations, 32 mega locations.
So till now we were talking about SRAM organization.
Yeah, earlier those two designs we talked about SRAM organizations. Now we are basically talking about DRAMs, because SRAMs are usually small in size. Okay, whereas DRAMs are very large. Okay, DRAMs are extremely large. Even the same concept is used. The decoding scheme is almost same, but what we saw in the earlier case, those were basically SRAMs, because the size were 1K into 1 or 16 into 8, those small designs. Okay. The same thing I am showing you, the concept that we have used in 1K into 1 chip will be repeated here itself, but it's in a larger scale. Okay. Let's see that how basically this one works. Now this is one internal organization of a 32M into 8 dynamic memory chip, DRAM. Okay, there are two signals. One is row address selector and another one is column address selector. Okay. These signals are generated from the read signal itself to separate the address bus and to activate them at different time. When the row part is activated, because these are large circuits, and you do not want them to be getting mixed up. Okay, because there will be delays in these circuits. That's why the activation happens at different time. So what is basically done, and these are basically latches. So the value, why these RAS and CAS are used, because these address lines may be used once it is latched. Once it is latched, they will be basically stored here. That address lines can be used for other purpose. That's why these latches are used. These are basically control signals. So as if the address is locked. using this RAS and CAS. So once this is locked, then unless you reactivate this one, no new value will go. So even if these values change, it doesn't affect. So these are the latches. The rest part looks same. So let's for example, this is basically 32M. So how many bits are required? You require 24 bits address line. 32M, that means 10 plus 10 plus 25. 10 plus 10 plus 5. 5-bit address. Do you agree with me? 10 is for kilo, 10 is for mega, 5 is for 32. So this is 25-bit address line. Look into my camera. 10 plus 10 plus 5-bit address line. 10 for kilo, mega, 10 for kilo, this is for 32. So 25-bit address lines are used for addressing one location in a 32M into 8 DRAM. 8 is the data lines. Now, if the separation happens like this, that so the address lines are A24 to A0, and here it is A10, it is A11. What they are saying that this part is used for column. And this part is used for row. So it is 14-bit. This is 11 bits. So if it is 14 bits row address decoder, how many rows will be there?
2 to the power 14.
Yes, 2 to the power 14. 2 to the power 14. That means 16,384 rows. If you look into the PPT slide, you will find that this is the cell array has 16,384 rows. So using these 14-bit row addresses, we select one of those rows. Okay. Now all the values will come from this. How many values will come? 2048 bytes, because there are 11 bits for column selection and one column is 1 byte because we are giving it 8-bit data. So one column is 1 byte. So basically those multiplexer and demultiplexer will be 8-bit width that you can simply replace it. So the 8 bits will come here. Okay. So the column decoder, what it does basically, this is a slightly different organization where the column decoder actually selects the particular column. All columns coming here, all columns are coming, 2048 columns are coming, but it only selects one of them. You can say that this is basically a kind of demultiplexer architecture. Or you can also use the typical decoder architecture also. So depending on how you organize them. That's why on top you can see 16,384 rows, and each row contains 2048 bytes. But you do not need 2048 bytes to be decoded, required at the output stage. You only require 8 bits. So that's why only 8 bits or 1 byte will come out of these 2048 bytes. Which one will be selected? Depending on the value of the, this one. So that's why this is column decoder. We call it, this is column decoder. So column decoder actually decodes it, and it only selects one of those 2048 bytes and passes through it. Okay. Now this is what basically a 32M into 8 DRAM works. There are synchronous DRAMs also, but the circuit is more or less same. Here basically the operation works in a synchronous manner, but let us see that how basically this particular circuit works. Okay, in case of normal dynamic RAM. Okay, let me explain this part a bit in details. So 256 megabit of DRAM chip is configured as a 32 into M. So this is basically 2 to the power 14, this rows 2 to the power 11 equals to 2048 columns. We have 16384 into 2048. Okay, into 8, which is nothing but 256 megabits or 32 megabyte or 32 megabyte, or you can say 32 megabyte. These 16,384 cells, the 16,384 cells in each row are divided into 2048 groups of 8. Okay. So it basically forms 2048 bytes of data. So therefore 14 address bits are needed to select a row, and another 8 bits are needed to specify a group of 8 bits or byte in the selected row. So a total of 25 bit address is needed. The high order 14 bits and low order 11 bits are used as address row and column order. Okay. So there are certain assumptions, because we cannot always see that we will increase the number of pins. So to reduce the number of pins needed for external connections, the row and column addresses are multiplex on 14 pins. Now this multiplexing, which I was talking about, they are done using RAS and CAS. So RAS and CAS will come into picture now. These are select line. These are select lines. Okay. These latches are useful. So what we want, say, if say this is a CPU. Now, if you want, all the 24 bits will be coming, or 25 bits address. So making these many lines coming out of the processor is difficult in design, because external pin connection takes 3/4. External pin connection for any chip consumes 60 to 75% of the total area of the chip. This is the trouble. So you can't increase the size of the address bus as you require. Address bus you can increase internally, but when you require them to be connected with external pins, because these are pins, these are all pins. So whenever you make more number of pins coming out of the processor size gets increased, because if this is the total area of the chip, only design happens here itself. The remaining portions are primarily used for making the pin connections, because they are not transistors. These are wirings, and these wirings you need to make them properly, otherwise there will be inductions, there will be lots of voltage issues, there will be short circuits and other things. And since they will be connected with some other devices, this is basically we need visible points coming out of the processor. So exact statistics I may not be correct, but if I remember correctly, it is somewhere between 60 to 75% of the, or 3/4 of the chip area is dedicated only for getting the external connections. So if the 3/4 area of a chip is used for external pin connections, your objective should always be to reduce the number of external pin connections. And one of the ways of doing these external pin connections less is just splitting the address into two parts, and first part will go first. After some time, the second part will go by. That will, essentially, you may say that it will make the system slow. Correct. From outside, if you think it will take time, but if you look into the complexity of the decoders also, the decoder also takes time to decode the address. By the time decoder gets ready for row, you can actually give the column address. That is the reason it is practical to split the address into two parts. One goes first, it gets latched, then the other one goes there. Obviously, it will be not as fast as if you send the whole 25 bits address together, but that solves one problem, that your chip area is drastically reduced. That is one of the reasons that always these address bits are multiplexed. Even if you look into 8085, in 8085, we have, how many address bits are there in 8085? Can someone tell me?
16.
16 bit. How many data lines?
32.
No. 8085, 8 bits.
1 byte.
Yes. But if you look into the signals which are used in 8085, they are like this. The buses are like this. AD0 to AD7 and A8 to F15. Total how many lines? 24, total 16 lines. But ideally, how you require 24 lines. 16-bit address lines and 8-bit data lines. What they have done it, they have multiplexed the lower order address A0 to A7 with the data. That's why these lines are called AD0 to AD7. Sometimes these lines work as A0 to A7, and sometimes these lines work as D0 to D7. That's called multiplexing. So obviously for that you require additional signal. What is that signal? Address latch enable, ALE. This is specific to 8085, so don't get confused with this one. This is specific to 8085. Why it was done? It was done to save the space. And they also thought that while you do the reading operation, because memory is a slow device, why do you need the data bus to be activated immediately? Because you know that for read operation, initially you require the address. So you give the address, then latch the address using this signal. Once the latch is over, then you release it and make it data bus. And by the time memory gets ready. This is called latching, and the same concept is used here. So first you latch the column address, then you latch the row address, or first you latch the row address, you select the row, and then you latch the column address. Okay. So during a read or a write operation, the row address is applied first. And it is loaded into the row address latch in response to a signal pulse on an input control line that is called RAS. It is latched on a signal RAS. So you first apply row address A11 to A24. It gets latched there on the pulse RAS. This causes a read operation to be initiated. So in which all cells in that selected row are read and refreshed. So shortly after the row address is loaded, the column address is applied to the address pins and loaded into the column address latch under the control signal. There is a second control signal, that is column address strobe or select. So based on this, now the appropriate group of 8 sense right circuit is selected, because there are 11 lines in CS. So there are 2048 number of groups. Out of this 2048 number of groups, one group is selected. Every group contains 8 sense right circuits, because this is 8-bit. Now there are other advantages also. What happens in case of memory transfer? It's not only one transfer happens at a time. In the operating system, I don't know whether memory has been paging has been discussed or not. But if you look into the paging scheme, we never transfer a single byte or single word. We rather transfer a page. And a page consists of multiple words. Okay, so that is the reason we basically get the advantage of keeping the row fixed and continuously changing the column. Okay, so it makes faster decoding also. Let me tell you how it happens. In case of memory read-write operation, we don't read a single location in modern computers. We read page. Page 0, page 1, page 2, page 4, page 3. And each page contains multiple words. So obviously in the order of 2 to the power k, depending on what is your page size. Usual page sizes are 512k or 512 bytes. It can be 1k, 2k, 4k pages. So if it is, let's assume 512 words. So one page contains 512 words. It can be 1k also. The page size may vary. It may be 1k, 2k, 4k, depending on the organization. And you don't read a single address at a time. Whenever the read up, even if you do a fetch operation, when we think about from control unit's point of view, control unit only requires one instruction. It does not require the whole page. But because of the nature of the program, we know that the consecutive instructions will be always fetched with higher probability. So two concepts will be introduced in your operating system here. One is temporal locality and spatial locality, which are the building blocks for going into cache memory. And they are based on principles of locality. That means you don't transfer only one byte or one word. We don't transfer one byte or word. Rather, we transfer one page or a block of words. The reason is that in any program, if the instructions are like this, I1, I2, I3, I4, I'm talking about instruction. It is true for data also. I4, I5 this way. What the temporal locality says that, if you access an instruction I1, I think that there is some audio feedback coming. Somebody is unmute. Can all others please mute your mic? So what the temporal locality says? Temporal locality says that whenever you fetch one instruction or use one instruction, the probability of using the same instruction in near future is higher than probability of using another instruction. That's called temporal locality. What is the spatial locality? So the temporal locality says that if I use this instruction at time t0, I have a better chance that I will be using the same instruction in near future. That's called temporal locality. Temporal, that means time domain. With respect to time, if I am currently using instruction I, there is a high probability that I may be using the same instruction in near future. That's called temporal locality. On the other side, when you talk about spatial locality, when the instruction I1 is being used, which will be very much relevant with respect to the page concept, that whenever I am using I1, the chance of using I2, I3, I4 and I5 are more than any other instructions which are far away from me. That's called spatial locality. So it means when you fetch one instruction from memory to the control instruction register, you can assume that the next instruction will be I2, probably with higher probability. Obviously, jump is there. So don't get confused with those type like jump, branch, and I know that those things will come. But if you look into the common behavior of the programs, your chance of fetching the next instruction is more than fetching the next to next instruction. That's called spatial locality. So if that is the reason, why don't we basically read more than one words at a time? Because the activation itself takes time. The read activation itself takes time. The decoding, row decoding takes time. So instead of applying row decoding continuously, why don't we latch the row address first and then change the column address sequentially so that we get the next consecutive word. So the DRAM that we basically looked into the previous diagram is accessed. The contents of all 16,384 cells in the selected row are sensed, but only 8 bits are placed on the data bus. And this byte is selected by the column address bits A0 to A10, because there are 2048 number of columns. A simple addition to this circuit makes it possible to access the other bytes in the same row without having to reselect the row. So with just a simple modification by making the sense circuit a little bit intelligent, what we can do when a row address is applied, the contents of all cells in the selected row are loaded into the corresponding latches. All will be loaded. And then you apply different column addresses. What will happen? Your row decoding is only once. and you get all 2048 bytes available to you. And you know that those 2048 bytes are consecutive locations. You change the column address. So that means you get this whole block very quickly. That's why instead of reading one row and then do the other operations, you rather row multiple rows. Okay. And that actually falls well within the concept of spatial locality, which is very important for cache memory designing and also paging. Okay. So this arrangement leads to a very useful feature. So all bytes in the selected row can be transferred in sequential order. Actually, this is one part, this is one part, this is one part, this is one part, and they say the four different words make a page. Now all these four are actually arranged in a row. And you make the entire row available to the circuit, sensing circuit. The column will select, this one will be selected first, this one will be selected, then this one will be selected, then this one will be selected. And this makes the entire transfer first. You do not do the row decoding in consecutive cycles. You do only row decoding once, only do column decodings in consecutive cycles. Thus, a block of data can be transferred at a much faster rate than can be achieved for transfer involving random addresses. So in case of random, every time the address is changing. But because of the nature of the access, you know that randomness in access is very rare. It may happen, but it is very rare. Accesses are always sequential. Always means 99% chance you will access the memory locations sequentially. If that is the case, then we can take advantage of this. Thus, a block of data can be transferred at a much faster rate than can be achieved for transfer involving random addresses. This block transfer capability is actually known as a fast page mode feature. So we don't transfer only one data, we transfer a block of data. And that actually is a requirement for a typical cache memory organization also. Okay. So when we talk about memory transfer, we actually do not transfer one byte or one order. Now, I will make one thing completely, it should be clear in your mind that do not get confused with 8085 memory, because that is not a commercial processor where all the complex processing are done. They are only for academic purpose. So 8085 is always a sequential. You don't access more than one memory location at a time. So do not get confused with 8085 or those older processors. What we are talking about these modern processors. Okay.
You are telling like initially if we could have done like only all the bits were like decoded, if we use decoder to decode the bits, the area would be higher on the higher side. So what we did that we splitted those addresses into rows and columns, and
right.
Still since we are using like special locality and higher order bits are fixed of addresses, and we can use that, we can have the same advantage because only lower order bits are changing, and at the same speed but using the same lesser area we are accessing the data.
Right. So we have now twofold advantage. One is we reduce the size of the chip by multiplexing the address lines, okay, which is also there in 8085. At the same time, for consecutive locations reading, we do not need to apply RAS signal continuously. RAS you apply only once, and then you apply column address stroke or CAS continuously. So to read the consecutive locations. So it's a twofold advantage now. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, memory technology has advanced a lot during last 20 years or so. So there are many advanced which actually I'm not going to discuss all these things because those are not required and unnecessarily increase the burden of the syllabus. What I will stop here. I will only show you the practical designing address decoding for a typical 8085. Whatever I talked about till now is that how basically we can design DRAMs, SRAMs with larger size. Now let us see that the processor that we have already seen into our laboratory, that 8085 processor, how basically the memory can be interfaced with that processor. With that, I will basically complete the memory systems, and then we will move to the cache memory part in the future lectures. Okay, so now let's take an example of 8085. It's a completely 8085 thing now. Now 8085 has an interesting feature, which is that latching of the address and data bus. So for that you need additional signals. So the 8085 has A0 to A7, also D0 to D7. And these two are combinedly known as AD0 to AD7. And the remaining are A8 to A15. So when you combine A8 to A15 with A0 to A7, it becomes address bus. And it is 16-bit. When you take out separately D0 to D7, it becomes data bus, 8-bit. How to do it? This transition from AD0 to AD7 to A0 to A7 or D0 to D7 with the help of a signal, a special signal ALE is called address latch enable, is generated by CEU during the memory read or write operations. This is a special signal, like row address select, column address select. You can say that this is a similar signal. It has not that big effect like RAS, CAS, but ALE has some advantage. So how it works? During fetch or read, both are read type operation, huh? Fetch or read, both are same, memory read. operations, initially the ALE is high 1. So the circuit looks like this. Something like this. So AD0 to AD7 is given to this latch. So during the initial clock, the first clock cycle of the memory read operation, what happens? This latch goes high. And say, let's talk about, we are talking about fetch or read. Both are same. Fetch or read, both are basically read operation. So memory read is a signal that is also generated by the control unit. ALE is a signal that is generated by control unit. So when ALE will be generated, when memory read will be generated, that are all control unit knows that. At what clock pulse ALE will be generated, at what clock pulse memory read will be generated. So when the memory read signal goes high, okay, during the initial stage, because it takes 3 clock cycles to complete a read operation. It takes 3 clock cycles due to complete a read operation or fetch operation. It takes 3 clock cycles. If you look into, if I find time, I will show you these timing diagrams maybe after this vacation. So this is T1, this is T2, this is T3. These 3 clock cycles are used for read operation and fetch operation. Now, why these 3 clock cycles are needed? The first clock cycle is basically used for latching the address. Okay, and the remaining 2 clock cycles are used for reading the value. Okay. Now, the first clock cycle, this particular edge is the mark where the address latch goes enabled, and after this point time the latch goes disabled. That means the value which is available during the first clock cycle is assumed to be the address, even if the same value goes here. But in the next clock cycle onwards, the value may be changed, because if it's a read operation, the new value will come from here. That's why this line gets converted to data lines. And also during write operation, because the same line will be used to send the data also, after first clock cycle, this latch ensures that this data path is cross. So nothing will go out here. So the data is not confused with the address. This is what is done basically in 8085. What it does, you know, A8 to A15, they are same, because A8 to A15 there is no dispute. They are basically separate address lines, higher order address lines. Now the A8 to A15 will be combined with this one, and you will get the 16-bit address line, and it goes to the 8085 memory decoder. Okay, and that decoder is a simple decoder. It's basically the RAMs that we are using in 8085, they are not this complex. They are also decoding can be done like in the static dynamic RAM decoding. That's fine, but from CPU side, the signals stop here itself. So these 3 clock cycles are needed. 1 clock cycle is used to latch the address, and then the remaining 2 clock cycles are used to get the value from the processor to the from the memory to the processor, or processor to the memory, depending on the read and write operation, whatever actually you are doing it. Now let us see that how larger memory can be interfaced using 8085. So this is a kind of design problem. Now let me tell you that I have 16-bit address. Now 8085 memory interfacing. Let's assume that we have, and memory is never available with all 64K in a single block. You may have different size memory available. Let's assume that we have availability of memory like this. One is available as 32K, all are in what byte? 32K into 8. Another one is available as 16K into 8. Some are available at 8K into 8. And another 8K. I will not go further below than 8K. That will unnecessarily make the circuit large. Let's assume that we have 4 such chips available. We call it C1, C2, C3, C4. Total, how much? 32K plus 16K, 48K plus 8, 56K plus 8, 64K. So we have 64K into 8. That is the maximum memory. We cannot interface more than that. Now, the manufacturer, when the manufacturer of the motherboard, they are planning, let's say they get the memory chips, because these chips are designed by third parties. They may not always design the chips in 32K, all the chips are in 32K or something like that. Because also as a designer, you may not want to provide the entire 64K memory, that may be expensive for you. You may want to provide only some memory, say 48K or 16K. Like if you look into the motherboards that we have used in our laboratory, probably if I mentioned there, we don't use the entire 64K range available. We don't have the 64K available in the entire board. That may be expensive. So they provided only, I remember, the 16K Pro in these boards. So the rest of the 48Ks, they have not provided. You can insert those chips. Okay, you buy it separately and you can insert it. So basically it is expansion of the memory. The same thing happens with our modern day processor also. When you buy a computer, if it is a 64-bit address, you know that 64-bit address means 2 to the power 64, this many memory is possible. Are you going to get this many memory when you buy it? No. You buy only 8 GB of memory, or maybe 16 GB, or maybe 32 GB. But that is not equivalent to 2 to the power 64 or even 2 to the power 48-bit. It's a huge number. So there are always chances of expanding the memory. Now, given a scenario when you have, say, availability of chips in these dimensions, let's assume that these are dimensions. One is 32K 32K, one is 16K, one is 8K, one is 8K. And I want to design a decoder and I want to interface all these 4 chips with the processor. What kind of additional circuitry is needed? That is what we are going to look at. So this is 32K. So how many address lines are needed for this? Guys, tell me how many address bits are needed for this 32K?
15.
Yes, 15. So I connect A0 to A14 here. How many address bits are needed here? I think 13. 14. A0 to A13. A0 to A13. Here it will be A0 to A12. Here it will be A0 to A12. Now I need to decide that what will be the mapping of this, because our entire space is 0000 hexadecimal to F hexadecimal. This is the entire space of the memory. This is 64K. 0000 to this one 64K. Now how do we select when the value comes from? So I want to select the right memory while reading and writing operations. So we need to, that's why those chip select signals, if you now remember that why I was talking about that chip select signal, that is CS1, this is CS2, this is CS3, this is CS4. Sometimes you read it from here or write it into here. Sometimes you do the read write here. Sometimes you do the read write here. How do you decide this? This all needs to be done depending on the address bits. Data bits are always same. This is D0 to D7, D0 to D7, D0 to D7 and D0 to D7. You can multiplex them to a multiplexer. These data bits will be multiplexed using a multiplexer. That's very easy. We need to generate these chip selects. Now, if I define the range, let me tell you that I make this one as the range. Its range, it is 32K. So for 32K, I can write it like this. Its range may be 7FFF. This range is 32K. If you carefully look into it, you'll find that this is 32K. Now my next one is a 16. I can say that 8000 to 89 AB BFFF. This is basically 16K. Then C000 to DFFFH. This is 8K. Then E000 to FFFF. This is 8K. Let's assume that this mapping is given. That you need to design the memory mapping as per this. The 32K chip will be mapped to these locations. The 16K chip will be mapped to this location. 8K chip will be mapped to this location, and another 8K will be mapped to this location. And read-write operation can happen to any one of these chips. Then what you will have to do? You need to take these address bits to find the particular, to get the select lines properly. You know that how many bits are needed here? But how to select this chip? Whether you will, because when A0 to A14 is given here, the same A0 to A13 is also given here. So whether to read from here or here, that will be decided based on chip select. One chip select, two chip select, chip select. How can we do it? Very simple thing. You basically take one way I'm telling that you take the higher order bits, say A12 to A15, and you apply 4 to 16 decoder. Or rather, what you can do, 3 to 8 decoder, use 3 to 8 decoder. 3 to 8. A13 to A15. Now, if 3 to 8 decoder is there, that means A15, A14, A13, A12, and then up to A0. What I'm saying that you take the higher order 3 bits, okay, apply it to a 3 to 8 decoder, you get 8 lines. So this is decoded line 0, this is decoded line 7. When this line will be 0? When all 3 bits are 0. Okay? So one line corresponds to 8K. If you carefully observe it, this one line corresponds to 8K because there are such 8 lines. Okay? 8 into 8, there will be 64K. Because if these values vary from 0 to 1, all these lines vary from 0 to 1 full, then by varying these 3, you can actually select this 8K. So A0 to A13 is nothing but 8K. Now which 8K you can select it based on the higher order bits. That is what we are talking about decoding. So every line corresponds to one 8K. So now the first chip is basically for 32K. So the first chip is for 32K. So this line is nothing but 8K. So if you basically take 4 such lines and make AND OR gate, this becomes your chip select 1. The next 2 makes 16K. You take these 2 lines, make an OR gate, it gets CS2. So 4 plus 2, remaining 2 lines are actually mapped to the last options. Okay. And if you carefully look into their decoded values, this line represents to the last 8. This line represents to last 8K. This line represents to second last 8K. So this will be your CS3. This will be a CS4. So using the higher order address bits, I can actually get these select lines. All other lines, A0 to A12 is given to all chips. Because this is 8K. Now the second chip, this one, it requires A0 to A13. You take one bit also from here. Okay. And for the first chip, you require A0 to A14. So you require this bit also as the address. But while you select that chip, based on the conditions of A13, A14 and A15, you take this as the chip select 1. Is that clear? This decoding? Hello? Is the concept clear that how different ranges can be mapped?
Yes.
Yes. So I shall stop today here, and you can do different type of mapping. So for example, if I change this mapping, I think you shall be able to generate this chip select signals. You shall be able to generate these chip select signals depending on the mapping itself. And you can provide the address bits accordingly. Be careful why you are giving the address bits. This requires only 14-bit address, or sorry, this requires only 14 bits. This requires only 14 bits. This requires only 12 bits or 13 bits. This requires only 13 bits. This requires 15 bits address lines. All data lines are D0 to D7. Only you need to generate this chip select. Read write will go to each and every chip. But read write will not read always unless the chip select is there.
Sir, you are muted.
So these chip selects are enabling the chip signals. Unless you enable these lines, you will not be able to get anything out of this chip. So read, write, address, data, they have no meaning unless these chip select signals are available. So in a design, when you have multiple chips are used to interface the memory, you need to select the right chip at the right time to get the value. Because I told you the entire memory may not be interfaced in a single chip. It may be interfaced through multiple chips. So if it is interfaced through multiple chips, you need a decoding scheme. So what I discussed today toward the end, that was a decoding scheme for a particular mapping given. If I change this map, you need to change this decoder also. Okay, I have given very simple mapping like this is 8K, this is 8K, this is 16K, this is 32K. I can make this is 24K, this is 4K, this is 8K, and the ranges also I can change it. Then the decoding will be a little bit complex, but with a little bit of calculations, you can actually find out that what will be the decoder. Okay. This part you carefully do it, practice it, take some examples of different kinds of mapping, assuming that the whole memory space is 64K, because 8085 has 64K. We don't get beyond 64K. So how the 64K mapping can be done through varying availability of chips? That is what I want you to explore further. Okay. So with that, I shall stop today. I'll take the attendance and let me we covered a lot of topics today, so please carefully read these materials which I will be uploading, and these are very important for your understanding of the memory interfacing also. So please be careful. Okay, please respond to the attendance call. If I call your name 2 times, that means you are not responding. So if I go to the next roll number, you can assume that I heard your response. Chandra Prasad, 16 batch.
Yes, sir.
K. Jitin.